Tonight, the government under fire after new 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum.
We are in intensive negotiations with the Americans and in parallel preparing reprisals.
On the street, a blunter Canadian response to Donald Trump.
It's just one fool making life difficult for thousands, millions of people.
Saying farewell to Mark Carney, the man who showed Canadians the way into outer space.
People often say that the first person has to do it well, or there won't be a second person.
And a Canadian organization funding surgeries in Ukraine.
When you come to a place like this and you see that there really is so much more goodness in the world.
Putting smiles back on some wounded faces.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault.
Thank you for joining us. Donald Trump's elevated 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum are now in effect, triggering fierce debate over what Canada should do next. The Prime Minister says more time is needed to negotiate with the U.S., while saying that if a deal isn't reached, Canada will strike back. Still, Mark Carney is facing immense pressure from those who say the time to strike is now. Ashley Burke starts us off tonight with the fight to determine Canada's next move in this trade war and why that decision is so significant.
The Prime Minister responding to a new blow in Trump's trade war with words, not actions.
The latest tariffs on steel and aluminum are unjustified. They're illegal. They're bad for American workers, bad for American industry, and of course for Canadian industry as well.
Canada isn't retaliating yet, hoping to keep talks going with the U.S.
We have had really strong counter tariffs against the Americans already. We are looking at different scenarios right now, and we will take a decision, but we need a bit more time right now, not too long.
Canadian and American officials have had numerous rounds of negotiations in Washington, including talks just hours before Donald Trump signed his order upping steel and aluminum tariffs to 50% on nearly all countries without exempting Canada. During question period, the Conservatives taking aim.
He's got Canada's tariffs doubled on steel and aluminum. He promised he was the man with the plan. He can't even get a deal.
We are in intensive negotiations with the Americans and in parallel preparing reprisals if those negotiations do not succeed.
But it's not just the opposition pressuring the government to fight back now.
We have to be meeting force with force. We cannot back away from this. This is a person who is not rational.
Ontario's premier says he may hit the U.S. by taxing electricity and told Carney he should retaliate too.
We can't sit back and let President Trump steamroll us, try to shut down our steel industry, take jobs down to the U.S. He has no regard whatsoever for jobs here in Ontario, and we need to slap another 25% tariffs on the steel.
But slapping on reciprocal tariffs could go one of two ways.
The pros of imposing tariffs are that it really puts pressure and puts pain on the United States that incentivizes them, hopefully, to lift the tariffs in one way, shape, or form. The cons of imposing tariffs are that it may antagonize the U.S. administration, it may undermine discussions that are ongoing, and it may make it much harder to get to a negotiated solution.
Of course, retaliatory tariffs could also hurt Canadian companies that import U.S. goods and Canadian consumers if those costs are passed down.
And Ashley, there have been some, mixed messages throughout the day about how the talks are going.
Yeah, Adrienne, Doug Ford said that he thought a deal was close, but the country's ambassador to the U.S. said, well, Canada's made progress. It's too soon to say that. Now, the Prime Minister did win on another front tonight. He passed his first confidence vote on the speech from the throne, a lot of it about his plans to build up Canada to resist Trump, his tariffs, and his threats.
All right, Ashley Burke in Ottawa tonight. If these tariffs stick, Canadian cities built around the steel and aluminum industries face the most immediate threat. And as Jamie Strachan shows us, it's not just plant workers who will get hit hard.
Hamilton, Ontario, steel town, a city already facing economic pressures, now a whopping 50% tariff on its biggest industry. Another blow.
I don't have issues with the states. I think it's just one fool making life difficult for thousands, millions of people.
The development hitting a nerve, not just for steelworkers, but also the community at large.
Relations will never, ever come back to what they were.
The frustration has some hoping these tariffs might somehow revitalize the industry.
In a warped way, what Trump has caused is for Canada to grow stronger.
A possible solution looking beyond the U.S. and expanding exports to other nations. But until then, the impact of the entrenched U.S. trading partnership will be felt deeply by Canadian steel manufacturers.
50% makes it a whole new ballgame that will put us over the edge.
The Steel Association says the industry had just started to calibrate to a 25% tariff.
We were able to start to resume relationships and trade a little bit. Now, all of a sudden, again, this just throws another wrench into it.
800 kilometers away in Sault Ste. Marie, the mood is equally gloomy, where Algoma Steel is the city's largest employer.
When Algoma hurts, home improvement stores hurt, grocery stores hurt, retailers hurt, restaurants hurt, and that's going to be the case if these steel tariffs are in place for any significant period of time.
A similar story in Quebec, North America's biggest aluminum producer, also hit by 50% tariffs. Industry leaders there say this latest round will virtually end shipments to the U.S.
Very few companies have that kind of margins, to absorb a 50%, even at 25%. Some were hanging on, but they were willing to do it for a short period, expecting the tariffs to go back.
Part of this roller coaster tariff narrative. What is next? Up or down? Rollback or exemption? Who knows? Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Renowned Canadian astronaut and longtime cabinet minister Mark Carney has died. His wife shared the news in a statement saying he passed after a brief illness. Rafi Boudjikanian now on his life and his lasting impact.
And liftoff. This is how Mark Carney shot to public acclaim. Just over 40 years ago, he became the first Canadian in space, a feat he would eventually repeat twice over.
All of the things that I would have ever dreamt of, well, even many that I didn't even dream that I could ever do. So I'm very, very happy to have been able to fly on 3 occasions, and especially to finish off with an opportunity to visit Station Alpha.
Moments that stuck with him years later.
It was an ad, as you point out, in the Ottawa Citizen back in '83, and I decided to take the leap, not thinking I would get chosen, but I took it anyway, and I was chosen 6 months later, and that changed my life completely.
Other Canadian pioneers of outer space say his impact was gigantic.
People often say that the first person has to do it well, or there won't be a second person. And I think as a woman, I've always felt that. But I think for Mark, it was really not just him showing Canadians that we had a place and a role in Canada in the space program, but it was also really to show the Americans that we had not just the talent of a Canadarm, but we had people that could back it up. And I think that's what that was really an important step for Mark and for all of us.
He would go on to become the president of the Canadian Space Agency, then fully trade his astronaut gear for the trappings of Parliament Hill in 2008. Carney would serve both as Transport and Foreign Affairs Minister in former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government. His colleagues called him down to earth.
Not drawing attention to himself, that was his style. He was supremely classy and intelligent. That's the way he worked.
I remember when I was a rookie parliamentarian, he helped me. He gave me a lot of good tips.
With your indulgence, I would ask for a moment of silence.
His sudden death today leaving parliamentarians in shock.
He was, I think, searching for the best answer, not the most partisan answer on every issue I talked to him about.
This man was a real gentleman. As a cabinet minister, when I raised some issue with him, he always wanted to reach out, okay, what will be the best solution?
Carney's political aspirations had included leading the Liberal Party, but Canadians will remember him for how high he soared. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Wildfires across the prairies continue to keep thousands of people from their homes. New evacuation orders are in effect in Alberta, with dozens of fires out of control, and Manitoba remains under a province-wide state of emergency. At least 9 fires are considered out of control in Manitoba, including the one near the city of Flin Flon. That's on the Saskatchewan border, a province whose 9 uncontained fires include one near La Ronge. Many evacuees from that town are in Prince Albert tonight, and so is Alexander Silberman.
The fight against fire tearing through L'Orange in northern Saskatchewan, from the air and on the ground. Not enough to stop flames from destroying part of the main street in town. A former trading post home to hundreds of Indigenous artifacts, now destroyed. The Rona next door also gone, along with nearly 20 homes.
I know there's a lot of people are feeling really down about that for sure. We still not out of the woods.
This tired volunteer firefighter taking a break from the front lines.
The fires create their own storms.
He says conditions became too dangerous from exploding propane tanks, forcing crews to briefly give up the fight on a reserve north of the town. What does Sucker River look like now?
It looks like a war zone.
Homes reduced to rubble, neighbors' cars charred to blackened metal shells.
You kind of feel helpless because you have your senior leaders that are telling you to back off and you want to go fight it, but it's just a helpless situation.
Jocelyn Theodorf says she spent more than half her life in L'Orange.
We cry, that's our home.
Theodorf and her daughter now living in their SUV because they can't find a hotel room. More than 7,000 people have left the area, leaving limited options for those in need of a place to stay.
I hope my town gets better.
Their lives reduced to a suitcase and a few shopping bags.
We're all grieving as a community. We got to be here together.
Hundreds of kilometers northeast in Denair Beach, entire streets burned to the ground. That fire now extending across the border into Manitoba, where several communities remain under evacuation orders. Many of the thousands of people fleeing fires are arriving here in Prince Albert. I'm at an evacuation center where people can get a warm meal and a cot to sleep on.
And Alexander, there's not just one fire threatening L'Orange.
That's right, Adrienne. A fire is continuing to burn along the highway directly south of the community. And Saskatchewan's largest fire is approaching L'Orange from the southeast. Both of those could force additional evacuations in the coming days, putting more pressure on places like this.
All right, Alexander Silberman in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan tonight. Thank you. At least 11 people were killed, 33 injured in a stampede outside a cricket stadium in southern India. Police tried to disperse the crowds as people tried to break through a gate and climb a wall to get inside the stadium. They wanted to join fans celebrating the team winning its first ever Indian Premier League title. Police in Toronto say they arrested 10 people revealing dramatic video of gunmen firing dozens of rounds at patrons of a newly opened pub back in March. And Thomas Stagg explains police also say the attack has links to the city's deadly tow truck turf wars.
In this silent security video newly released by Toronto police, people duck and take cover as 3 masked men burst in and open fire at a busy pub on its opening night in March, one of the worst mass shootings the city has ever seen, injuring 12 people.
Some were shot multiple times. One person was shot 6 times and survived.
Police now say they've linked that attack to a rash of violence targeting the local tow truck industry, including this drive-by shooting 3 days earlier outside a tow yard. Watch as the victim hides behind that car. The suspects then turn around and start shooting again. The victim, struck by a bullet, falls to the ground but survives.
This disregard for human life is completely unacceptable.
Police say that same night, the suspects pulled up to a gas station, ambushing a man washing his truck, running after him, and firing more shots out in the open. All of it now leading to 10 arrests.
There's no kind of organization to them. There's no emblems. There's no colors or code. There's nothing. They're just young males.
Hired shooters, basically, is what you're saying.
That's what we're looking at, yes.
For years, Toronto's tow truck turf war has spurred shootings and arsons, and it only appears to be worsening, says this expert.
Different organized crime groups are competing for control of that industry.
Investigators say they've seized these 4 handguns, but they're still searching for that assault-style weapon seen firing in the pub. Toronto police say they've laid more than 200 charges in connection with this string of incidents, and they're still looking for one suspect. The youngest person arrested is just 15. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, the Stanley Cup final is underway in Edmonton tonight with the Oilers trying to get the first win against the visiting Florida Panthers.
Over the line it goes to Kapanen. Back to McDavid, flips in front. Tip scores! Matthias Ekholm has tied it.
So stressful. Plenty of goals so far in this rematch of the 2024 Championship Series that the Panthers won in 7 games. So Julia Wong is just outside Rogers Place where fans are taking this all in tonight. How are they holding up?
Well, they are still feeling hopeful that we could see the Oilers win tonight. You know, they were ecstatic when the team tied the game 3-3. The crowd here erupted into cheers, screams, and it was like they were pulsing with energy. Now, we are in overtime right now, but there is a confidence this year that the Oilers could go all the way.
Felt like it was the right spot, right here.
Barry Backey is hoping his hunch,
It was all around this area, yes.
can bring the Stanley Cup home after all these years. A good luck charm, if you will.
Stuart Skinner would have played quite a few of his minor hockey league games here.
This week, Backey scraped ice from a face-off circle in Skinner's old rink and put it in a thermos. Taken to Rogers Place, it was mixed into the ice-making tank of a Zamboni, along with ice from other Canadian rinks with connections to Oilers players. An initiative from Rogers called This Is Our Ice. Remnants of the past resurfacing home ice for Game 1.
I think it's a pretty interesting thing, and a special thing, exciting thing, knowing that the Oilers players have pieces of their careers, hometowns, knowing that a whole country is supporting them.
The Oilers lost last year in Game 7, but there's confidence this time around.
Probably high chances right now. The game is really getting stronger.
I think that we have a better chance this year and we're looking good going into it.
Some didn't wait long to get into team gear, like this fan who flew in from Oregon.
This is the ultimate lifetime chance is to go to a Stanley Cup game. I never thought I would.
From last year, this was a big favorite.
Also rooting for the team, crowds in Newmarket, Ontario, ready to cheer on one of their own, Captain Connor McDavid.
It's a special moment for this community. Hockey is a big deal in Canada, and it's a big deal in Newmarket, and Connor McDavid is our hometown hero, so it's just a great way to bring people together.
We have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
Along with powerhouse players, this sports podcaster says this year the Oilers have a couple things going for them.
One, home ice advantage, just being able to be here. They've been so good at home, kind of just be relaxed at home. And then the other thing for me that I think is really important is the experience. You have to learn how to win. And the Oilers have been doing that over many years now.
Now we are in overtime right now. This game still tied 3-3. People here are holding out hope that there will be a win here tonight, and they are leaning on each other for support. Literally, you know, earlier I saw a group of people with their arms around one another, eyes fixed on the screen, and all just waiting with bated breath, again, hoping that the Oilers pull out a win tonight.
I don't know. Can we take all this tension? All right, Julia Wong covering Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final in Edmonton tonight. Thank you. Well, a woman who complained about sexual misconduct by an RCMP officer says it's being swept under the rug.
He grabbed my leg, he touched me.
Why the officer won't face a disciplinary hearing. Next. Plus, the top secret drone attack that stunned Russia's military.
All of that is a very complex operation which could have gone wrong at any number of stages.
Andrew Chang breaks down how Ukraine pulled it off. And later, as the fires rage in the West, a Manitoba teen gets creative to help those in need.
I just wanted to build something that could connect people faster.
His interactive solution. We're back in 2. So I want to show you a very cool place, the control room. My dad was a television director. He used to direct comedies like King of Kensington, Trouble with Tracy, classic Canadian comedies. So I kind of grew up in control rooms. But this is next level. This is a beautiful room. I mean, I haven't got a clue what is happening here at all, only that I kind of love it. And if you gaze up at all these monitors, all of these sort of represent cameras and feeds that are being fed into this control room, into the CBC. And if anybody understands what's going on in here, it is my friend Steve Penny, who is the Nationals director. So you're the conductor of this orchestra.
Yeah, conductor, quarterback, general, pretty much any sports or military thing you can throw out there. The way it works is that we have our lineup to our show, which our editorial desk has been working on all day. We come in here and do some coding in here, putting in different things. And now all these machines that we were just talking about basically are now controlled by this keyboard. And we create a playlist, and through that say, okay, get ready for the shot of Washington. You hit a space bar here, and there's our shot of Washington.
I mean, my impression from listening, because I wear an earpiece, so I hear what goes on in here. You're always very calm with me, but I feel like sometimes it's maybe a little more amped up in here.
Well, it always depends on the night, because we work on it all day and we're building it. By the time we go to air, unless there's breaking news, which we always knock on wood, we're well prepared for the show. And we're not going to yell in your ear. We don't want you upset. So there may be a few animated words up here from time to time, but mostly it's pretty calm.
Steve Penny, thank you.
You're welcome.
See ya.
I wanted to talk right away about being homosexual. I think I scandalized everybody at marriage.
That was Edmund White in an interview with CBC in the 1990s. The author and journalist has died at the age of 85. Once dubbed the godfather of queer lit, White published more than 30 books about the experience of being a gay man in an age of repression and revolution. He died at his New York home. Well, an RCMP employee says the force is sweeping a case of sexual misconduct under the rug. She filed a complaint against an officer, but he's avoiding a disciplinary hearing by retiring. Danielle LeBlanc has her story and the force's long struggle with accountability and reform.
He introduced himself to me and then was asking about me, asking some personal questions.
This woman remembers the first time she met a high-ranking RCMP officer at the workplace gym in 2022. The university student works for the RCMP under a federal employment program. She was about half the age of the officer, who held the rank of staff sergeant.
He would text me late at night or even at work. He would compliment me when he saw me from afar.
The relationship took a turn in 2023 after an evening in the RCMP's workplace bar.
We went to his office. There was no one else there. He kissed me, he grabbed my leg, he touched me. It didn't last very long, a few seconds. I felt very uncomfortable.
CBC is protecting the student's identity as a complainant in a case of alleged sexual misconduct. The RCMP has long struggled with the treatment of women in the workplace, going back to the arrival of female cadets in 1974.
It's the same story that we've heard time and time again. And to have it still happening and somebody at a higher rank who should know better doing that to a young person, it just shows just how toxic it still is.
Former Constable Janet Merlo launched a class action lawsuit against the RCMP in 2012 on behalf of the victims of abuse, violence, and harassment. The RCMP offered a full apology in 2016 and paid $125 million in compensation to 2,300 complainants. The RCMP commissioner says sanctions are being toughened for any inappropriate behavior.
Anything to do with sexual assault, sexual harassment, inappropriate relationships being within the organization or outside the, it's not tolerated.
The RCMP has tallied up 74 cases of employees who retired rather than face a conduct hearing since 2020. While they leave the force with a stain on their personnel file, they get to keep their pension and their cases are not made public. This is what happened in the case of the staff sergeant, to the disappointment of the woman who filed a complaint against him.
So to me, that was very shocking that the person that I'm trying to accuse is now deciding my case. He's deciding if we're going to hearing or not because he wants to retire.
Danielle LeBlanc, CBC News, Ottawa.
Some top scientists say it is time to ban a kind of mining on the ocean floor.
There is no rational argument for why we need to have very expensive deep sea mining technologies.
The risks they say it could pose to a fragile ecosystem. Plus, the secret Ukrainian attack straight from the pages of a spy novel.
You're hiding right under the nose of the giant.
Inside the sophisticated drone strikes that caught Russia and the world by surprise. And Canadians part of a team performing delicate reconstructive surgery on the faces of Ukrainian soldiers.
When you come to a place like this and you see that there really is so much more goodness in the world than there is the bad.
The doctors giving hope to those who've lost so much. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next. Oh my, you really are seeing that. That really is the elephant in the room. The lumbering thief caught on camera in a convenience store in Thailand on Monday. It used its trunk to move a freezer and grab some treats, apparently favoring packets of dried bananas and peanuts. Yum. Rangers eventually coaxed the animal away. Well, there's a new warning tonight from top climate scientists calling for a ban on a type of deep-sea mining. They say it is not worth the potential harm to our oceans. But Hanomansing introduces us to a Canadian-based team claiming it can be done with minimal damage.
These robotic claws are designed to pick up mineral-rich rocks from the ocean floor. But the deep-sea mining company behind this technology, Impossible Metals, says it won't destroy the environment around those rocks.
We use AI to identify life. If we see life, we put a quarantine virtual circle around it, and the vehicle flies over the top.
The vehicle, designed and tested in Ontario, is set to go deep into the Pacific Ocean. The prize, these polymetallic nodules that contain valuable minerals like cobalt and nickel.
We actually are going to need massive quantities of all of these metals, and the ocean has the biggest source, and we can access it for the lowest cost and the quickest time with the least environmental impact.
But a group of leading ocean and climate scientists want a halt on this new watery gold rush, saying the oceans are too important to the habitability of Earth to gamble with.
They look at revenue, they look at the cost, they look at the financial aspect.
you hardly see anything really deep about the environmental and social consequences, what happens to future generations if we mess up the ocean.
Beyond concerns over harming ocean life, the ocean itself silently absorbs 90% of the excess heat generated by rising greenhouse gas emissions.
Ocean, however you twist and turn this, is the #1 cooling factor on planet Earth.
A new U.S. executive order seeks to fast-track mining approvals. Impossible Metals is on board and has applied to mine off the coast of American Samoa. It might seem this test in Georgian Bay is far from the reality of mining in the Pacific Ocean, but given the Trump administration's recent push, the path for Impossible Metals is clearer than ever before. Hanomansing, CBC News, Collingwood, Ontario.
Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. Disfigured by the ravages of war, Ukrainian soldiers and civilians given a new lease on life by a team of medical volunteers.
You see that there really is so much more goodness in the world than there is the bad.
A second chance to face the future. But first, Ukraine strikes back. A weekend drone attack more than a year and a half in the planning targets Russian bombers in one of the largest and most daring attacks on Russian soil ever. So how did Ukraine manage to pull off such a feat? Andrew Chang, host of About That, breaks down what we know.
The plan, as we've heard it now, was simple. Smuggle 100 or so Ukrainian drones behind enemy lines, along with specially modified containers built to deploy those drones, load those containers onto the backs of trucks, drive them right up to Russian air bases, then open the retractable roofs, outfly the drones packed with explosives, and the rest is now history.
Ukraine says it carried out large-scale drone attacks on multiple air bases.
Truly something out of a spy movie.
A reminder, despite Russia's overwhelming strength in numbers, that Ukraine is a resourceful, determined enemy.
Ukrainian and Russian social media are now filled with video like this, circulating widely, claiming to show the attacks and the damage from them. According to Ukraine's domestic intelligence agency, the attack caused $7 billion worth of damage, badly compromised Russia's strategic cruise missile capability, and, according to Ukraine's president, involved a level of covert infiltration of Russian territory that, if true, might even be more daring than the attack itself. I'll explain. Dubbed Operation Pavyutina, or Spiderweb, Ukraine's goal was to do maximum damage to a part of Russia's war machine that has been, in a very real way, almost untouchable until now.
More than 40 aircraft are known to have been hit, including strategic bombers and one of Russia's very few remaining surveillance planes.
The target? Russian warplanes, capable of hitting Ukraine from very long range. So, able to fight without ever actually entering Ukrainian airspace and staying, therefore, well out of range of anti-aircraft fire. This required more than a year and a half of planning and organization, according to Ukraine's president. And once put in motion, the suggestion seemed to be the whole thing could have unraveled at any moment.
І вже зараз це можна говорити публічно. Офіс нашої операції на території Росії знаходився безпосередньо поруч з управлінням ФСБ Росії в одній з їхніх областей.
The FSB, that's Russian intelligence, specifically counterintelligence and surveillance. By Ukraine's account, the operation took root right under Russia's nose.
Можна сказати впевнено, що це абсолютно унікальна операція.
You're hiding right under the nose of the giant. The last place the FSB is likely to look is the apartment building across the street.
Now, at this stage, I should warn you, we are getting into the realm of details, the ultra-clandestine stuff that's just impossible for us to independently verify. Where possible, I'll make clear where we're getting our information from, just so you can judge for yourself. But just remember, these are two countries at war. And in every attack, there's not just strategic value, but also propaganda value. So let's keep that in mind. Okay, so Ukraine's president says 117 drones were used in the attack. At least some, or potentially all of which, would have been smuggled in from Ukraine, according to the Associated Press.
But we should bear in mind that these are relatively small size flying bombs in effect. So putting them together in a container or distributing them among different loads would not be such a huge task. But then actually making sure that they were ready to fly and preparing for the attack completely undetected by Russia's own security and intelligence services would have been a more complex task.
We can see from these unverified photos that those drones were eventually hidden in the roofs of these large wooden containers. Some media have described them as sheds, except the roofs are retractable by remote control, which would allow those drones to fly straight up and out and towards their targets. So in theory, once these containers were fully loaded with explosive carrying drones, they could be loaded onto the backs of trucks, driven to the outer perimeters of Russian air bases, far, far away from the Ukrainian front line, the roofs pulled back, and out come the drones flying straight to their targets. Russian intelligence apparently none the wiser.
All of that is a very complex operation which could have gone wrong at any number of stages. We've heard different reports of how these drones have been being controlled. There's been a lot of talk of use of AI for managing and for targeting and locating the targets, but we've also heard that they were individually controlled by people actually sitting in Ukraine.
This photo, posted by Ukrainian intelligence, shows one facet of this plan: a layout of the airfield to be attacked and overhead imagery of the specific targets. These red X's possibly marking weak points. Fuel tanks, most often in the wings, sometimes in the fuselage, that if hit, could make the plane a complete loss. And several videos show in real time what these attacks might have looked like, how much damage they might have caused, and what vulnerabilities they might have uncovered.
Electronic warfare systems, air defense systems, those are quite expensive. And the Russians don't have the capacity to be able to defend the entirety of the depth of Russia with those systems.
Russia will have been prepared for nighttime missile and drone attacks against their aircraft in a specific range from Ukraine. What they won't have been prepared for is an open daylight attack using these short-range drones that had to get very close to the target, and also, of course, at ranges that were immensely greater.
Let me show this to you on a map, because Russia's Ministry of Defense has confirmed the attack, identifying 5 regions that were targeted, all within a very short span of time. Now, 2 things worth pointing out here. First, that Russia says it repelled attacks at these locations. This contradicts the Ukrainian account, which is that 4 bases were successfully hit. But the other thing worth pointing out here, and what makes this attack so incredible, is along the lines of what you just heard, how far from the war some of these bases are. Thousands and thousands of kilometers away from the front line, deep within Russian territory.
The range of this attack is so important because it shows that there's no place you can park these strategic bombers that Ukraine can't theoretically reach. So what that means is it's changed the chessboard, and Russia has to decide, where do we move these planes now in order to keep them safe?
But now let's talk about what Russia has reportedly lost. The number widely cited now by Ukrainian defense analysts and security sources, but which we can't independently confirm, is that more than 40 Russian warplanes with long-range strike capability were hit. Among them, the Russian Tu-95, originally designed to carry nuclear weapons, but since reconfigured to fire cruise missiles from very far away.
They take off, they reach a certain altitude, they open their bomb bay doors, and then Russian missiles come out of them and have long glide paths to be able to get into Ukraine, and also at higher altitudes that make it difficult for anti-air to hit them.
It's long been recognized that the best Ukrainian approach would be to actually eliminate these flights in the first place. And that is what Ukraine has done in spectacular fashion. Take a major chunk out of the fleet of aircraft that Russia has been using to pummel its cities.
According to Ukraine's security service, the attack hit 34% of strategic cruise missile carriers parked at Russia's various air bases. And experts say these will be difficult to replace, maybe even difficult to repair.
They no longer produce these bombers. and they have a limited amount of parts in order to repair them. So a large chunk of whatever was hit this weekend is going to stay inoperable. There's just no way around it.
Now, what we will only come to understand with time is just how big of a setback for Russia's war effort this really is. Ukraine has had other similar surprise successes. The sinking of the Moskva, the flagship of the Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet, was one. The invasion of Russia's Kursk territory was another. But Ukraine remains, at least militarily, very vulnerable. What this is, however, is a major propaganda coup.
One of the biggest problems Ukraine faces is a widespread assumption outside the country that it is on the ropes, that Russia is winning, that Ukraine only has a certain amount of time before it will have to surrender. This will be a major breakthrough in terms of showing that Ukraine is very much still in the fight and is able to carry that fight to Russia.
And let me point out one more thing about the timing. This attack came just hours before Ukrainian and Russian negotiators were set to meet in Istanbul to discuss, among many things, how to make a ceasefire real. Experts say hopes were never high for these talks to begin with. But if Russia has been hesitant to make serious concessions up until this point, it's hard to know how its stance may change or perhaps harden after what Ukraine has just done to it.
Donald Trump said today that he spoke with Russia's president and claims Vladimir Putin told him, quote, very strongly that Russia will respond to Ukraine's weekend drone attacks. Coming up, Canadians are among a group of surgeons giving hope at a hospital treating Ukrainian soldiers.
We've got better tools, better instruments, we can do more.
How they're reconstructing faces damaged by the war. Next. disfigured faces of the brutal 3-year war in Ukraine.
21.
Shattered by shrapnel and ballistic blast, put together again by an international team of volunteer doctors and nurses.
That gives me hope that we can do better and we'll learn.
That humanitarian group, Face the Future, was founded by a Toronto surgeon nearly 3 decades ago. As Raphael Bouvier-Auclair tells us, its work in Ukraine is giving victims of war a new lease on life.
For days, Ukrainian, Canadian, and American surgeons and nurses will work in this operating room in Western Ukraine. Pressure is high. The surgeries require long hours of work. The soldiers that are being treated here have several facial injuries.
21.
Roman is 21 years old and is proud to have volunteered to go to the front lines. My contribution to the army was great, he says. I eliminated a lot of enemies. But it came at a cost. The young man was badly injured by a blast near Kursk in Russia. Those volunteers working with Face the Future Foundation, a Canadian organization, will treat about 25 Ukrainian soldiers in this local hospital during this week.
That gives me hope that we can do better and we'll learn. And at the end of the day, although in times of war and with some of the things we see, we really do think the world is a quote-unquote, bad place. When you come to a place like this and you see that there really is so much more goodness in the world than there is the bad. So that gives us hope.
Many of the facial injuries being treated are reminiscent of the First World War, but treatment has changed since then.
We've got better tools, better instruments, we can do more. But it's absolutely true that we learned a lot from that war.
Andriy, a surfer turned soldier, has had about 24 surgeries to repair his face and body.
You have lots of other issues.
He thought he would get his last surgery this week.
You will have to wait at least 3 months before you can have the surgery for the implants.
But just learned that other procedures will be necessary to fix his jaw.
I just hope that this year will be marked by the reconstruction of my body and my soul, he says.
Nelia had a reconstructive surgery to Face the Future in the fall. She was a civilian injured during the Donbass War in 2014. The surgery has changed her life. Her kids' friends were afraid of her, she says. Because of her face, people thought she was crazy. Since the surgery, everything has changed. Nelia bought makeup for the first time in 10 years.
1, 2, 3, Slava Ukraini!
Nelia is one of the hundreds of patients that Face the Future has treated worldwide. Funded with donation, this foundation has worked in several countries like Ghana, Rwanda, and Nepal. Here in Ukraine, Face the Future manages 2 missions a year.
Do you want the bed any higher?
With the help of local medical staff like Natalia, a Ukrainian surgeon. She has worked for about 15 hours on the first day. It is my contribution to this war, she says.
Are you ready?
Amongst her patients is Roman. At 21, he's the same age as Natalia's son. The surgery is complicated. Roman is in the operating room for several hours. But it is a success. With the ongoing war, it is difficult to know what will be next in his life. For now, I just want to get some fresh air, he says, and think about something else. He also wants to spend time with his family, like his mother. A way to treat the other injuries, the one we don't see.
In addition to the work you saw in that story from Raphael Bouvier-Auclair, those Face the Future volunteers are also training local doctors and nurses. With hundreds of thousands of wounded Ukrainian soldiers, it's expected facial reconstruction surgeries will be needed long after the war ends. Well, for nearly 20 years, this is the wonderful, kind face Canadians have woken up to. Heather Hiscox has hosted CBC's Morning Live since 2005. But today, Heather announced that she will be signing off in the fall.
Above all, I'm forever indebted to Canadians, my faithful viewers. Their support has sustained me. Earning and keeping their trust has been my most rewarding achievement. So thank you very much.
Heather's final appearance will be November the 6th, exactly 20 years to the day since her first morning broadcast on what was then CBC News World. Her last show will take place in front of a live audience at the CBC Broadcasting Centre in downtown Toronto. Well, up next, a Manitoba teen puts his computer science skills to work.
A lot of these resources were pretty hard to find. This was something that the community might need.
How his interactive map is helping fire evacuees in our moment.
One out of every 3 Canadians is a smoker, and most of them do the majority of their smoking at work. For years, smokers have known that their habit dramatically increases their risk of lung cancer, emphysema, and heart disease. But now there is evidence that their smoking also harms the health of their fellow workers who don't smoke. Studies in Japan, Europe, the USA, and Canada have concluded that the risk of lung cancer and bronchial disease is more than doubled for non-smokers who are forced to breathe secondhand smoke. The smoke that drifts through the office and that's invisibly recirculated but not filtered by the workplace ventilation system.
There can be no doubt anymore among reasonable people that it hurts non-smokers.
The dangers of secondhand smoke have been well documented in a soon-to-be-published book by ex-smoker Martin Dewey.
I had quit smoking at great cost to myself, and I was very proud of having done it. And it really annoyed me that, having gone to all that work, I would still have to go and be exposed all through my working hours every day in order simply to make a living. I felt trapped.
As smokers have dwindled into the minority, non-smokers have pressed for semi-solutions like segregated offices, smoking cessation programs for their smoker friends, and better ventilation systems. But some Canadian workplaces have taken a new direction. Here in Kingston, Ontario, the heart of old Upper Canada, the outside air is as crisp and clean as the facade of this pre-Confederation City Hall.
And just as pristine and traditional as the city itself is Kingston's newspaper, the Kingston Week Standard. It's Canada's oldest daily newspaper, established in 1810. But on January 1st, 1985, this traditional newspaper did something very radical.
Journalists are notoriously heavy smokers, yet here in the Whig newsroom, not a cigarette in sight. The paper's publisher banned smoking altogether. At the same time, the paper also began to refuse all tobacco advertising. Publisher Michael Davies was unfazed by charges from the tobacco companies and some of his smoking employees that he'd usurped a natural right.
I think the right is the right to clean air, and the right to fresh air by everyone, and the right to pollute somebody else's air is the unnatural thing.
Momentum to ban workplace smoking is picking up. For instance, on New Year's, the Boeing Corporation in Winnipeg told its 600 employees to butt out. The company has also instituted a preferential hiring policy towards non-smokers.
And now the federal government is following the lead of private corporations like Boeing and the Whig Standard. The government's latest announcement does not go so far as to totally ban smoking in federal office buildings, but it does guarantee a mediation process so that members of the Public Service Alliance who don't smoke will be protected from the smoke of others. Undoubtedly, non-smokers in the private sector will be paying close attention. In Toronto, I'm Michael Foreman for CBC News.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang.
This is Justin Fung, pictured here with his dog Mac in Winnipeg. Mac was the inspiration behind Justin's helpful new website for fire evacuees. So the 18-year-old just finished his first year of computer science at Western University. He wanted to use his skills to do something for his community during this dire time. So tonight, his very helpful creation is our moment.
So the compass is just a live website that's got a map on it that shows nearby community resources like emergency shelters or donation points. A lot of people are doing like really amazing work all around the city. They're posting in those forums and they're organizing drop-offs, and a lot of businesses as well are accepting donations. And so I just wanted to build something that could connect people faster. What inspired me to start this whole website was I have a pet myself, a dog named Mac. I can't imagine life without him. I was looking to make some animal food donations, and so I came across the problem that, you know, a lot of these resources were pretty hard to find. This was something that the community might need. Right now I have 4 different colored pins. So there's emergency shelters, donation points, animal shelters, and I've just added one this morning for community events. So it's really nice to see the support that the community is showing. If I could help even one person just find the right place to donate the right things, then I would consider that a job well done.
Justin, you've already done a ton. He wants to see this website go countrywide to help other communities. And my favorite thing is that he told our producer, Lily, that his parents didn't really know what he was up to. And he told them just to watch tonight and they would see what he's been doing. So you have to be proud. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.